On a chaotic afternoon of traffic in Los Angeles, the noise of cars was constant as people rushed across the streets between the bustling crowds. A homeless man, tired and with eyes full of despair, held out his hand with a simple request, "Can you give me $1?" He expected little more than indifferent looks or perhaps a polite murmur of apology. But fate had other plans. Without knowing it, he was about to cross the path of one of Hollywood's most humble and admired figures. What happened next would change not only this man's day, but his entire life. Before continuing the story, tell us where you're reading from. If you like this story, click on the subscribe button, because tomorrow we have a special story for you. It was just another night in Los Angeles. The city seemed as vibrant and frenetic as ever. The main square was packed. Families strolled together, tourists took photos, and locals hurried through the busy streets. Nearby, the windows of luxury stores sparkled, displaying clothes that seemed to belong to another world, unattainable for most people passing by. Tom sat quietly near a modest pizzeria. The contrast between the brilliance of the city and his reality was striking. He held up a piece of cardboard with large but wobbly letters that read, "Can you give me $1? Any help is welcome." Next to him, a cup containing a few coins seemed to defy the bright lights of the square. Tom, looking tired and distant, adjusted the sign from time to time, trying to keep it visible to passers-by. His shoulders were bowed, as if the weight of life had become unbearable. His eyes roamed over people, looking for some sign of empathy, but almost everyone ignored him, looked away, or walked past quickly. His mind was full of contradictory thoughts: shame at finding himself in this situation, despair at not knowing how to escape it, and a glimmer of hope that, although weak, refused to die completely. While the smell of fresh pizza hung in the air, his stomach rumbled, a painful reminder that he hadn't eaten all day. Small gestures of frustration escaped him. He looked at the glass, shaking it slightly to hear the sound of the coins, as if that might attract more generosity. He adjusted his already crooked glasses and ran his hand through his messy hair. Every movement seemed charged with resignation. Among the crowd crossing the square, a mysterious man watched Tom from afar. He moved calmly and stopped a few meters away from the man with the poster. His eyes studied Tom, assessing the situation before deciding what to do. After hesitating for a moment, he slowly approached. Tom adjusted the sign for the 5th time that hour. He wasn't even sure if he was doing it to attract attention or simply to distract himself and stop thinking about how everything had gone wrong. People walked past quickly, some avoiding eye contact, others pretending he wasn't there. "How are you?" Tom heard the voice before he realized who had spoken. Slowly, he looked up to find a man standing in front of him. The man had a calm expression, as if time didn't matter to him. He was unlike anyone Tom was used to seeing around. Tom frowned suspiciously and replied automatically, "I've seen better days." The man tilted his head slightly, looking at the sign next to Tom. "Can you give me $1? Any help is welcome," he read aloud as if testing the words. Tom felt his face flush. The shame he had been suppressing all day was about to explode. He adjusted his crooked glasses and shrugged. Yes, just enough to eat a slice of pizza would be fine. The man was silent for a few seconds, continuing to stare at Tom. Then, with a slight smile, he turned and entered the pizzeria behind them. Tom looked at him, confused. Was that it? Was he going back? Or had he come in because he felt uncomfortable? He had seen this before. People who seemed curious, but quickly left. But the man came back. He was carrying a pizza box and a drink. Without hesitation, he sat down next to Tom and placed the food between them. "Here, go ahead, eat." Tom blinked, not knowing what to say. "Really?" The man shrugged. "It's just a pizza. It won't bite you." "Go ahead." Tom picked up the box slowly, as if afraid it would disappear. When he opened it, he could smell the unmistakable scent of melted cheese and fresh tomato sauce. He couldn't remember the last time he had eaten something like this. "Thank you, really, thank you," he said, devouring the first slice almost without chewing. "You're welcome." The man leaned back against the wall, watching Tom eat. After a while, Clint asked casually, "So, what's your story?" Tom stopped chewing, the weight of the question bearing down on him. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and looked down at the box in his lap. "My story," he said, laughing short and humorlessly. "You don't want to hear it." Clint raised an eyebrow, as if to say, "I just asked, didn't I?" I'm not judging, and I have time, said Clint, crossing his arms. Go on. Tom looked at him, trying to understand what was behind that question. Was there real curiosity in Clint's gaze, or did he just want something interesting to tell his friends later? It's nothing special, Tom began. I had a normal life, a job, a house, all that stuff. And now, well, look at me. He gestured vaguely around, as if the scene spoke for itself. Clint nodded slowly. But how did it happen? Tom sighed, feeling the weight of the question. It's complicated. It almost always is, said Clint with a small smile. But now you're here. Something brought you here, and I'm curious to know what it is. Tom remained silent, his eyes fixed on the pizza, as if it could somehow give him the answer. Look, Clint continued, in a low, deliberate tone. I know it's hard to talk about certain things, but sometimes it helps. I don't know. To get it off my chest, he crossed his arms. I'm here and I'm listening. Tom took a deep breath, still undecided. Well, maybe I'll tell you a little. Clint smiled, as if he already knew that Tom would give in. Tom cleared his throat, avoiding direct eye contact. Well, it wasn't supposed to be like this, Nobody plans to end up here. Clint nodded, encouraging him to continue. But before Tom could say anything else, he hesitated, swallowing his words as if he wasn't ready yet. Clint leaned in a little, his eyes fixed on Tom. Take your time, but I really want to hear it. Tom took a deep breath, his fingers gripping the edge of the pizza box. Finally, he murmured, All right, I'll tell you. Tom held the pizza box like a shield, avoiding looking directly at Clint. But the words started to come out, hesitantly at first, then more fluently. I used to be an electrician, he began in a low tone. I worked at it for almost 15 years. I had my house, my car, and my wife, Sarah. Tom paused, swallowing. Her name seemed heavier than before. He looked out at the busy square, as if the memories were out there, among the lights and movement. She was incredible, strong, One of those people who always believed that things would work out, even when they didn't. We didn't have children, but she was my wife. We didn't have children, but she was my wife. We didn't have children, but she was my family. Clint, who was standing next to him, remained silent, listening intently. Tom took a deep breath before continuing. Everything was going well until the day she was diagnosed with cancer. It was in her stomach. We found out too late. He ran a hand over his face, trying to organize his thoughts. I sold everything I could to pay for the treatment. Worked overtime. Even jobs I knew weren't safe. Anything to give it a chance. Clint nodded slowly, with a serious expression. Tom shook his head, and a sad smile spread across his face. For a while, we thought so. We thought the battle was won. But the cancer came back, and this time, it was quicker. I lost her in less than 6 months. And that's when everything started to fall apart. I couldn't go back to work. Every time I picked up a tool, I thought of her and everything I had lost. I started making mistakes at work and was soon fired. It was as if every word drained a little more of his energy. I lost my job, then my house. The car was the last thing I sold. And then, well, you know the rest. I ended up here. Clint was silent for a moment, processing everything he had heard. Finally, he said, It's a lot to carry alone. Tom gave a short, humorless laugh. Who else is going to carry it? There's no one else. Friends disappeared when things got tough. Family. Well, I've never been close to anyone. In the end, it's just me. You asked for help? Really? Asked Clint, tilting his head. You're kidding, right? Look where I am. This is what asking for help got me. Tom pointed to the cup of coins and the sign on the floor. Nobody cares, Clint remained calm. I'm here, aren't I? Tom looked at him suspiciously. And why are you here? Because I believe that everyone deserves a second chance, and sometimes a small gesture can change everything. Tom studied Clint's face for a moment. He looked familiar, but Tom couldn't quite put his finger on it. Then something clicked. Wait a minute, said Tom, blinking slowly. I know you. I've seen you before. You're... Clint just smiled, as if he'd expected this reaction. Clint Eastwood, exclaimed Tom, with a mixture of surprise and disbelief in his voice. He looked around, as if looking for someone to confirm that he had noticed. Clint shrugged his shoulders without stopping smiling. Looks like I've been recognized, but what are you doing here? I mean, you're... Tom made a nervous gesture, as if words weren't enough to express his surprise. I'm just a person, Tom, said Clint, in a calm tone, like any other. I believe we can change someone's life, even with just a small gesture. Tom continued to stare at him in disbelief. That doesn't make sense. Clint lowered his head and his eyes met Tom's with unwavering sincerity. Because I can, and because I believe you can do something incredible with this opportunity. Clint stood up and held out his hand to Tom. Tom looked at the outstretched hand, not knowing what to do. Part of him wanted to accept it, but the other part was still stuck in fear and doubt. I don't know if I can do it, he said, his voice full of hesitation. You can, replied Clint firmly. You just have to believe. And if you can't believe in yourself yet, start by believing in me. Tom looked at him for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. Finally, he raised his hand and shook Clint's. Clint smiled and helped Tom to his feet. Nothing to lose, but a lot to gain, said Clint. Before continuing, Clint took Tom to a small hotel nearby. First, let's get you cleaned up, he said with a calm smile. Tom, hesitant at first, accepted the gesture. At the hotel, he took a hot shower, his first in weeks, and felt the water wash away not only the dirt, but also some of the weight he was carrying. After his shower, Clint took him to a nearby barbershop. Under Clint's direction, the barber fixed Tom's messy hair. When the cut was finished, Tom looked at himself in the mirror, surprised by the transformation. Dressed in clean, comfortable clothes that Clint had provided, he finally saw a version of himself that he hadn't seen for years. Clint smiled as he watched Tom leave. You really do look like a new man now. Tom adjusted his jacket and gave a shy but sincere smile. I feel different, better. Clint tapped Tom on the shoulder. Tom, you're ready. Tom took a deep breath and nodded. I am. They started walking through the square, Tom still trying to process everything that was happening. As they walked, Clint spoke with a naturalness that made Tom feel comfortable. You know, Tom, said Clint, looking at the shop windows around them, I've been through tough times too. Everyone has their battles. The difference is how we choose to fight them. Tom looked sideways at him. You've had everything you wanted in life. Clint smiled slightly, but didn't reply immediately. Not everything we face makes the headlines, Tom. But that doesn't matter now. What matters is what you do from now on. They stopped in front of a hardware store. Tom frowned, confused. Why are we here? Clint opened the door and gestured for Tom to enter. Because this is where it all really begins. Tom entered the store, still stunned by the revelation of who Clint Eastwood was. He watched one of the world's most famous faces walk nonchalantly through the aisles, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. The surreal nature of the moment did not go unnoticed by him. So what are we doing here? Asked Tom, his voice tinged with disbelief. Clint picked up a shopping basket and handed it to Tom with a smile. Take what you need to get back to work. Back to work? Tom blinked rapidly. I don't even know if I can still do that. Then, let's find out together, said Clint calmly. Now get what you need. Pliers, screwdrivers, anything that will help you get started again. Tom hesitated, but started walking down the corridors. He grabbed some basic tools, a pair of pliers, a set of screwdrivers, and a multimeter. Clint walked alongside him, occasionally adding extra items to the basket, such as a sturdy backpack, a pair of gloves, and even a light jacket. You're doing well, said Clint, as he placed an organizer box in the basket. You'll need this too. Tom stopped with a wrench in his hand. He looked at Clint, still not understanding why all this was happening. Why are you doing this for me? Clint also stopped and turned to Tom with a serious expression. Because I believe that everyone deserves a second chance, Tom. Because I know what it's like to feel lost. The difference is that I had people by my side when I needed them. Now it's my turn to be that person for someone. Tom looked down, feeling a lump in his throat. He didn't know how to respond. Clint took out his phone and made a quick call. He exchanged a few words with someone on the other end, then hung up and looked at Tom. Now we're going to an electrical maintenance company. I've already spoken to the manager. He's willing to give you a chance if you show that you know what you're doing. Tom's heart raced. Are you serious? More than ever, replied Clint. It's up to you now, Tom. If you really want to change your life, this is your chance. Tom took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. He looked at Clint and nodded. "Good," said Clint, patting him on the shoulder. "Let's show them what you're capable of." They arrived at the company, a functional building with offices and equipment scattered around. Clint stopped at the entrance and turned to Tom. "Remember, only you can show what you can do. I'll just open the door. The rest is up to you." Tom took a deep breath and nodded, feeling a new strength inside him. Clint smiled as he opened the door. "Come on, you can do it," said Clint. Tom followed Clint into the Prime Solutions building. They were greeted by the hum of power tools and the voices of busy workers. The space was practical and organized, with neat workbenches and electrical panels hanging on the walls. Tom looked around, feeling small in an environment he had once mastered with ease. Clint greeted a man who approached them. He was middle-aged, wearing a gray uniform and had a curious expression. "Mike, this is Tom," said Clint bluntly. "He's an electrician, although he hasn't worked for a while. I think he needs a chance to show what he can do." Mike looked at Tom, assessing him with the experienced eye of someone who has seen many workers come and go. He didn't look entirely convinced, but he trusted Clint's judgment. "Well, if you say so, let's see what he's got." Tom's heart raced. He looked at Clint, who gave him a thumbs up. "Come on, show him." Mike led Tom to a workstation with a faulty electrical panel. "Here's the deal," said Mike. "Fix it. Take your time, but do it right." Tom looked at the panel. It was simple enough, something he would have fixed in a matter of minutes years ago. But his hands were shaking slightly as he picked up the tools. Memories of past mistakes and his struggles threatened to surface. But he pushed them aside and concentrated on the task at hand. He carefully replaced some cables, adjusted the circuits, and checked his work. When he had finished, he stepped back and looked at Mike, who had approached to inspect the panel. Mike switched the panel on and off several times, testing the results. Finally, he looked at Tom and nodded. "Good work," he said. "No errors. Looks like you still know what you're doing." For the first time in a long time, Tom smiled and felt a wave of relief. "I'm a bit rusty, but I think I can catch up pretty quickly." Mike crossed his arms and continued to examine Tom. "Here's what we'll do. I'll make you my assistant. It's a start, but if you keep proving your worth, we can think about something bigger." Clint handed Tom a small card. It was simple, but the handwritten words caught Tom's attention. "Never give up on yourself. The world always needs someone with your courage." Tom held the card carefully, as if it were a talisman. He looked at Clint with tears in his eyes. "You changed my life, man. I'll never forget it." Clint smiled and put his hands in his pockets. That's how the world gets better. Before Tom could reply, Clint turned and walked away, blending in with the crowd in the street. Tom stood there with the card in his backpack pocket, watching Clint disappear around the corner. Tom took one more look at the company building before turning and walking in the opposite direction, his backpack on his back and the card secure in his pocket. Tomorrow would be the first day of a new life, and he was ready for it. The sun had barely risen when Tom woke up in the shelter. He looked around, his hands touching the backpack next to the bed, as if to confirm that it had all been a dream. The card with Clint's message was still in his jacket pocket, a constant reminder of his new opportunity. Tom put on his jacket, adjusted the straps of his backpack, and left for work. Walking through the streets, he felt a different energy inside him, as if something inside him had finally been rebuilt. When he arrived at Prime Solutions, Mike greeted him with a slight nod. "Ready to start?" "Sure," replied Tom, with more confidence than he expected to feel. Mike guided him through the basics of his new role, organizing tools, helping the experienced technicians, and, over time, taking on more complex tasks. It was a modest job, but for Tom, it was a new beginning. Throughout the day, Tom had moments of doubt. He made small mistakes, but each time he took a deep breath and remembered Clint's words, "Only you can prove what you can do." One of his tasks was to dismantle a fuse box that was more complicated than he expected. His fingers hesitated for a moment, but his years of experience gave him back his confidence, and he completed the task without any problems. When he had finished, one of his colleagues patted him on the back. "Good job, man. It doesn't look like you've been out of it for long." Tom smiled. "I'm glad to be back." Over the next few days, Tom gradually adapted to the rhythm of the company. He started arriving early, eager to learn and prove himself. Mike noticed his dedication and his colleagues gradually accepted him as part of the team. One afternoon during a break, Tom was sitting with a group of technicians when one of them asked, "Hey, I heard that Clint Eastwood was the one who brought you here. Is that true?" Tom laughed and shook his head. "Yes, it's true." The technician's eyes widened. "It's a long story," Tom replied with a smile. "But to cut a long story short, he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." That evening, back at the shelter, Tom took the card out of his pocket and placed it on the small table next to him. He looked at Clint's words and felt a renewed determination. Never give up on yourself. He knew he had a long road ahead of him, but with Clint's unexpected help, he was ready to face any challenge that came his way. On the bedside table, the words continued to resonate in his mind. Never give up on yourself. The world always needs someone with your courage. Feeling inspired, Tom decided to return the kindness. The next morning, before going to work, he used part of his first week's earnings to buy 2 coffees and 2 sandwiches. He gave one to the man sitting on the sidewalk with a sign that read, "Hungry, any help is welcome." The man looked at Tom, surprised. "Thanks, man. I didn't expect that." Tom smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "I know what it's like. Just give it back when you can, okay?" The man nodded, his voice charged with emotion. "Of course I will." The next morning, Tom set off for work with his backpack and a renewed sense of purpose. He still had a long way to go, but for the first time in years, he felt in control of his life. The camera focuses on the card resting on the table in the shelter, its handwritten message clear and inspiring. Never give up on yourself. The world always needs someone with your courage. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Clint Eastwood was walking through the crowd. His calm face radiated serenity as he disappeared around a corner, leaving behind another transformed life. That was Tom's inspiring journey, and the powerful impact that Clint Eastwood's kindness had on his life. But now I want to know, what did you think of this story? Do you think small gestures can really change the world? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you think needs to hear this message. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that show the power of empathy and human resilience. Want to be inspired even more? Click on one of the videos that appear on the screen to see another moving story. See you in the next video.